This is Law Journal.
Well, it has been said that there's a drug for just about everything that ails us. But let's say we're prescribed a drug or given a drug in a hospital, and it's the wrong drug, or we're given too much of the right drug, or we're given the right drug but at the wrong time. Who's on the hook? The doctor, the hospital, the nurse, the medical staff? Anyone at all. Good evening, I'm Attorney Christopher Naughton, and welcome to this week's edition of Law Journal. Tonight we take a look at medicine, doctors and lawyers, medical malpractice. Specifically, we're going to take a look at medication errors, both in and out of the hospital, and how it affects all of our lives and what can be done about it, and how often it may happen and we're not even aware of it. I'm joined by three guests tonight, all of whom have joined me before. Stephen Scheller to my immediate left, one of the principal attorneys and partners with Scheller, Ludwig, and Beatty from Philadelphia. And Marlton, again, known for their national work in product liability, medical malpractice, workers' compensation, and the like. Steve has been practicing for over 30 years now. Pat Iyer joins us tonight. Pat Iyer, I-Y-E-R. I know Pat now for a number of years. Pat's joined us on and off for a number of years. And she brings a different perspective to the program because she is a registered nurse and also the president and CEO of Medical or MedLeague Support Services in Flemington, New Jersey, and works essentially with attorneys, both plaintiff and defense attorneys, in gathering evidence and bringing together all of the facts and the data that needs to prepare a case that may or may not be going to trial, again, from both the plaintiff and defense perspective. So it's always good to see Pat join us and give us that non-lawyer's perspective. And Frank Allen joins us tonight. He gives us a very interesting perspective as well. He's from Archer & Griner, a law firm that has well over 100 attorneys in New Jersey, although they have a Pennsylvania presence as well. And Frank has the very interesting background of representing both plaintiffs, those who claim to be injured in medical malpractice and personal injury matters, but also representing hospitals and doctors. So good to see all three of you. And it's always, I never lack for color or for information when I'm joined by any and all three of my panel guests tonight. You know how I like to start the program. One quick question. We go down the line. Medication errors. It has been said that the human body is like a chemical or medical laboratory. So things go wrong in chemical labs. So we should not only suspect that things can go wrong when a medicine is applied to our body, but we should expect them to go wrong from time to time.
We found from studying medication errors that there's an incredibly complex system involved in giving medications in hospitals. The majority of errors come from physicians prescribing. The next most common type of error is the administration of the drug, followed by some errors in transcription and in pharmacy filling the wrong drugs. Okay. So all four of those are major causes of errors.
Do you think that people would be surprised, maybe even shocked, at how often medication errors occur at hospitals on a day-to-day basis? Or am I sounding like a plaintiff's lawyer?
No, I think the statistics show that we only know about 5% of the medication errors that occur.
Really?
The other 95% are either not detected or they're not reported.
Oh my goodness. That sounds high, Pat.
Many studies have confirmed that number.
Wow. Do your defense clients know that number?
I'm not sure what they know. One of the problems is that when people report their medication errors, traditionally our systems blame them, punish them, discipline them, terminate them, and that discourages people from sharing the errors when they are occurring. And as long as that error occurs and the underlying system that helped to create that error isn't fixed, somebody else is going to come along and make the same error. As soon as a person is taking 5 drugs or more, the risk of interactions is very high. And that's something that we need to stress to the audience, is that they need to be sure that every doctor that they see knows which drugs they're on, the complete full list of drugs. And that helps to reduce the risk of errors in prescribing.
I know it's hard to generalize, but when there has been a medication error, and that becomes part of your case in chief if you're representing plaintiffs, Steve Scheller, as you do, and Frank, as you often do, and Pat, as you help many of the attorneys who prepare their cases. Again, it's a generality, but generally, where do we find the genesis of the problem? And don't tell me just the system, because we just can, I mean, really, is it the doctors who are making the mistakes? Is it the drug companies that are really, I know where Steve Scheller is going to end up on this one. Who is the greatest contributor to the medication errors that we're seeing across the country, both in and out of hospitals today?
The greatest contributor are the physicians, statistically, with the administration Next, we have incredibly complex systems that are manually driven for the most part, that are not computerized, that are still based on interpreting handwriting, that are not standardized, and there's multiple places where errors can be made.
Yeah.
And no one gets up in the morning and says, I think I'll go to the hospital and commit a medication error. It's inattention, it's cumbersome systems, it's just all of those factors that combine that result in a bad outcome. A study of 6,000 medication errors showed that only 3% of them resulted in injury to patients. So there's a lot of errors that don't have any impact on the person whatsoever.
Except they may not get better, as Steve was saying before.
They may not get better, but
Right.
they're not going to be harmed. But it's the 3% that we put our focus on because those are the ones that are causing injury to people that could have been avoided. I've been an expert witness on many nursing malpractice cases, and several of them have involved medication errors, narcotic overdoses, chemotherapy overdoses, where the correct amount was not given or there wasn't correct monitoring of the patient. Patients require very intense, close monitoring when they're on certain drugs. We've made our hospitals safer by identifying some of these very high-risk medications like potassium chloride, which used to routinely kill people because it was injected directly into the vein instead of diluted. We recognize there's certain dangerous drugs, and we're working harder to make the hospitals safer.
Is it often then a case of doctors, perhaps, is it more of occurrence where doctors prescribe too much, or is it perhaps an instance where the wrong drug is prescribed?
It's a combination of dosage, wrong drug.
There's no clear leader in that, Pat?
It's those two are the most common, the wrong drug, the wrong dosage. What we're finding is that if you computerize order entry and you have doctors do direct order entry with keyboard or with a touchpad, that you increase the safety of that method of ordering. And in fact, there's a group called the Leapfrog Company that represents 20 million or so employees of major corporations that are now saying to their subscribers, we want you to send your patients to hospitals that have safe computerized medication administration systems. So there are outside forces that are trying to encourage stronger, safer computerized systems in hospitals. Those artificial intelligence systems have really proven to be very safe.
Interesting.
They prompt people. They ask the doctor, if you're ordering Dilantin, for example, what is the therapeutic value? If they're ordering penicillin and the patient's allergic to Mefoxin, for example, it'll warn people about allergies. Those are really effective in terms of using technology.
But they're expensive.
Fortunately, they're not readily available. Only about 7% of the hospitals have some computerized order entry for medications. And the doctors, some of them are still resisting having to do the order entry themselves.
Pat Iyer joining us tonight, and we see Pat about once a year, and she is with MedLeague Support Services. In fact, she heads it up. A registered nurse and author, often an expert witness in personal injury matters. She and her company put together the nuts and bolts, the evidence, the data for plaintiff and defense attorneys when it comes to medical malpractice and PI cases. You can contact her in New Jersey at area code 908-788-8227 or visit them on the web at medleague.com. Frank.
Medications both save lives and take lives. This program will explore the frequency of medication errors, the most common types and causes, and the clues to detecting that an error has occurred. This order sheet contains an error for 5-FU, a potent chemotherapeutic agent. The physician ordered the full 4 days' worth of chemotherapy for 4 days in a row. The patient died after 2 weeks of suffering as her white blood cell count dropped to critical levels. After the nurse calculated the correct dose of cisplatin and the physician signed off on the order, the transcribed order did not contain the decimal point. The pharmacy department is involved in dispensing errors. The wrong drug or dose may be supplied, or the drug is not sent at the correct time. The nurse allowed the methotrexate to infuse over 5.5 hours instead of 4. When the patient's mother questioned why the leucovorin was not administered according to the pattern of the first 11 treatments, her concerns were dismissed. By the time the physician came in to see the patient several hours later, the damage was done.